here we go, CT.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Cutoffs and Coffee. You see, the gang is back. CT and Coach James, T3 Performance. We're here with our Cutoffs. We're here with our coffee. Our guest today, we're excited to talk about Bob Beck, T3 players, athletes. Parents may be familiar with him. He is the Director of Baseball Operations at T3 Performance. He's instructed over 1,000 players in both softball and baseball. And when I tell you this is one of the busiest men in the facility at T3, I'm not lying. I've probably seen him train 1,000 athletes in 1 week over there. The guy's so busy. He's helped a ton of players play at a high level in both high school and college and beyond. And another thing that I love about Bob is it says in his bio that he loves to focus on the mental side of the game, which I think is just so important, which is something I think a lot of people are lacking. So without further ado, Bob Beck, a.k.a. the Hit Doctor. And Bob, I do have to say, we've had a lot of cool nicknames on here. James, has a couple. I've got a couple other of our guests have had some cool nicknames. The Hit Doctor might be the coolest one. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. It's our pleasure. We're really excited to dive into this. And kind of obviously from that intro, you're our first skill coach that we have on. And we've talked to strength coaches about implementing and communicating programs. But I'm really interested into this conversation because you're molding kids' swings at such a young age, and then you're also working with high schoolers who might have already had some experience, and you probably sometimes have to rework some of that. So I'm really interested to hear about the communication process that you have, and I'm excited to kick this one off. How are you doing under quarantine? Has things kind of changed for you a little bit? Obviously, we're all under the same circumstances. What are some of the things that you're doing to reach out to your kids these days?
As you know, like a big part of my teaching is the video aspect of it. And I'm big on, in this day and age, hitters kind of seeing the things that they're doing and what other high level players are doing and how it works into their style. So, there's been a lot of continuation with that. I actually created a shared folder for, iPhone users where I'm just dumping videos and breakdowns in there all the time. I've issued some challenges. You've seen my softball, baseball challenge on there, kind of tricking hitters to get off the tee because it gets boring to do that. And I've had them just, send me a lot of video. I've done a lot of, Zoom lessons, just to make sure players are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I've tried to get most of it, from especially our high school players to realize that even though we're in a pandemic and a quarantine, you still have to approach your game as if you're in season, like, you would be in high school. You'd be swinging every day. And this is where you really find out, how much you really love the game. Your discipline and motivation to actually get up every day and do that. So I've tried to keep everybody active, reaching out, telling people, send me your stuff. Others are better with that than some others are, but for the most part, I've been busy.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned that you're doing things to make it fun. And one of those was this tea challenge that you came up with, and it went kind of viral. It got all the way to Baseball Lifestyles, who has 500-some thousand followers. So that was pretty cool to see something organically grow from just an idea that you wanted to implement just to make hitting fun for some of these kids that are getting too routine. Are there any other drills or I noticed that's kind of a theme that you like to include is that aspect of fun and just almost to relax the kids? What are some other things that you do to kind of mix that up for kids?
The baseball softball challenge was actually a stolen from Applied Vision softball. I just took it and ran with it.
Okay.
So I can't take credit for it, but I tell you what, it took off with Allie Chinchar starting it, and then there's Anna Mancino. She did the stacked one where she hit the the wiffle ball on top and then the wiffle ball on the bottom and dropped the softball. That one got 1,300 views, and on an Instagram page that's a lot for kind of like a small town guy like me with 2,500 followers. So but teamwork is what it is. It can be boring. If it's not approached in the right way, you can actually become very robotic. So like I do in a cage. Teamwork is more of just to focus on, body movements and body sequences and, and pitches not only in your hot zone and all over the zone from, high, middle, low, in, middle, outside, but it's also the bad ball drills. I do what I call bad ball drills where I'll have them simulate like they're trying to time up a ball to hit, square a cock shot in their wheelhouse, but they're late, and I put the tee way back, or they're getting an out pitch and slow and low, and I got this small tee that's literally like 1.5 feet high, and they got to just learn the body movements to create repetitive motions that when they're in a game and the heat of the battle's on and all the emotions run in, that those moves just become automatic. So, during the pandemic, that's how I've utilized tee work. It's not just swinging the ball right down the middle. I have them moving it around and do different kind of drills where just use the ground and their lower half and how the hands come through, and it's been very successful, actually, more successful than I thought it would be.
That's awesome.
Real quick, I was going to say real quick before you move forward, let's say somebody's listening to this 8 weeks, 10 weeks after we've recorded it, and now that challenge is not at the top of your Instagram and social mediums. Would you be able to explain real quick, just in a couple of sentences, what that challenge was? Because I thought it was so cool, but I want to make sure people understand what it was you were doing.
Yeah, the softball baseball challenge was applied vision softball. They had a girl put a wiffle ball softball at the bottom, and they got holes in them to hold up the regular softball in the middle, and then you got to hit that wiffle ball, and then the ball just drops down. It usually takes 30-40 tries. But one of my girls actually put a wiffle ball on top, softball in the middle, wiffle ball at the bottom, and she hit the top wiffle ball and then came back around and just took an A swing and just crushed it. And that ball just dropped down. And then the next thing Mallory McClellan does it, and then Paulie Mancino does it. All my hitters started doing it, and I just told everybody, anybody sends me, that challenge, successful challenge, that gets posted. So I end up having 20 or 30 of those on there.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you haven't tried that and you're listening, pop on Bob's Instagram, which we'll hit on a little later, and check that out. Go ahead, James.
And the water bottle challenge is next.
Okay. Ooh.
The water bottle challenge is next. I won't even tell you what it is. You'll see it. And James, I want you.
We're looking forward to that. I think from a community building standpoint, that idea of a challenge was just one great way that you were able to make all these additional connections under quarantine to the hitters that you're working with, solidifying that community and building that community of athletes, which is awesome. I'm going to kind of divert a little bit and ask you this question that I love to ask. Was there a moment in your coaching career where there was either a light switch that flipped or a paradigm shift where you kind of looked at yourself and was like, I think, maybe I was coaching this way and I need to start coaching that way? Just kind of the evolution of your coaching style. Could you kind of dive into that a little bit? Yep.
Actually, it's kind of like the light switch went on, but then it was a dimmer. And, I have kind of 3 phases, and I won't go in depth on all of them, but I am going to hit on all of them. I started coaching in 1999 at the Diamond Indoor Sports Center under Danny Alley. That's where it started for me. I came in there with my son, and we did indoor baseball for years. And I coached 3 teams a session. You remember how that ran, the 50-minute simulated game? I don't know, you remember how that went? 'Cause I know you're up there.
I did it. Yeah, I was in those leagues.
Yeah, and it was amazing. I mean, it was challenging. It wasn't obviously not real baseball, but it was in the sense that you had a cushion baseball, and it was tough to put that thing in your glove, and it was tough to throw it. And kids really had to really focus on just the skill set of movement and being soft hands and being accurate with your throws. And my kids learned a ton from that simulated game. They had a ton of fun with an 80-foot field with a big green monster wall, and I actually was the one who put home run on this spot, triple on that spot, play the ball off the nets. Anyway, so that's kind of where it started for me. And Danny Alley really liked my approach with the kids and asked me if I wanted to do some lessons up there. And I was raw. I mean, I was no instructor at that time, but I always was hungry to learn. And I coached softball and baseball. When I got injured in high school, I tore my labrum, and it put me out, and it just became my passion. Still continued to grow. So, but then he wants me to do it in this setting of people just calling in, and so it kind of just evolved. Watching a lot of YouTube, watching Chris Check in a cage and Pete Barrios in another cage, and just learning from guys that had success with it. It was really big for me. I've always been big on telling my kids to find a mentor, someone who's done it or does it better than you, and ride their coattails. Because we all have borrowed concepts. Nobody reinvents the wheel on this stuff. But you get into prescribed ways, and you start kind of cookie cutting things, especially the young instructor like me. And I was guilty of it, doing the same drills with everybody. Not that it hurt anybody, but I didn't really learn the dynamic of the individual till I met Torrey Tyson at the the old T3, and he was in the New York Yankees coaching system. Neil French was the baseball director there at the time, and he played in the Yankees minor league system. And he brought Torrey in, and we hit it off. I mean, he came in at 3 or 4 different intervals. We put together some camps, and that guy could break down swings like nobody I've ever met, even to this day. And he actually threw BP a lot to Albert Pujols, and he did video for Albert Pujols, and nobody instructs Albert Pujols, but he was with him for many years, and I just learned from him. I saw an opportunity to learn, and he stayed with me up there on nights till 1 o'clock in the morning, and just taught me how to break down swings from a mechanical standpoint, and how the mentality actually ties into the mechanics of these hitters, and that's what makes them so dynamic and powerful. And every swing has intent. So that's where it started for me, and I just kind of grew a little bit up through like 2014, and then I met Jim Parquet from Big League Edge out in Kent, Washington. And the way that happened, I don't know if you remember this, but Gib Conroy, I was working with Gib Conroy as a 10-year-old, and Jim Parquet he was running these teams out in Dominican Republic, USA Latin American Baseball Classic, and he'd go all around the country, and he would try out players for his teams. And Gib's dad, Brian, sent Jim Parquet a video of him, and I made it for him, and he calls him and says, "Hey, that guy should be doing videos for a living. Can you give me his name and number?" So Jim Parquet calls me and says, "Can you run a tryout in the in the Northeast region?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so he booked a flight, and he came out, and we ended up putting together 4 or 5 teams, kids from all over the area. And and Jim and I went to BW3 that night, and just hit it off, and ate food and drank beers. And then he asked me to come down and be on his major league coaching staff. For me, that was big. So he takes me down to Dominican Republic in 2014, and I coached an 18U team with Tim Belk, who played for the Reds, and just absorbed just table talks with 10 guys from all major league different backgrounds. And that team that we coached had kids from California, Florida, New York, everywhere. And we ended up actually going to the semifinals, losing to a team that we beat in pool play. And that was a humbling experience for me, just to see it from a work perspective for a player, and how little those guys have down there. Hitting balls off tires, and their tee is a table, and hitting off a table, and their gloves are mittens. The only thing nice out there was the resorts that the tourists stayed in, and teams like us, and the major league facilities out there. And they were walled cities. Everything else, you'd drive down the street and you'd see mopeds, and 2 kids and a mother on it, machine guns all over the place. Very humbling for me, and that just really made me realize that hey, these players are hungry. They're fighting for their life to try to get out of there, and those guys are what I see as true passion for the game, hitting in bare feet and rock fields, and it was crazy. And then it kind of just split up, and I just kept growing until 2019. I met Ryan Lear from the Braves, and Reggie Smith, who was in the Boston Red Sox Hall of Fame. They're the pure swing guys. Yeah. And they saw my videos on Instagram, and Ryan Lear called me and asked me to come down if I, from a youth coach perspective, and run a camp for him down in Florida. And I went down there, and you want to talk about just, guys that just have an amazing amount of knowledge. And then, now I'm going to go down there actually, probably in the next 6 months or so, and help them out when they get back up and running. And so that's kind of how it's evolved for me. It's been a progressionary thing, but to me, it's like you guys teach, you never stop learning. If you stop learning, not only as a player, as a coach, you're in big trouble.
Yeah. And I've been lucky enough to, share a cage with you, or have a lesson in a cage next to you. And looking 6 years ago, and how you communicate has definitely evolved in some of the things that you've added. I'm seeing you bring new things to the table all the time. How much of that is keeping things fresh for you, or how much of that is new knowledge that you want to implant? Because, for me personally, if I'm running the same warm up all over the time, I'm getting bored before the athletes do.
Yeah. My lesson philosophy is pretty much more geared towards individual now. There's never the same lesson twice type of thing. I mean, I do some basic things with every hitter, like being able to sequence their swing from the ground up, and bat path stuff that every major leaguer does when they get to the launch position. But how they get there, that's what I've become more open to realizing, the 3 different body types that are out there, and not every hitter can adapt to a certain body. They all have a way they move. For me, it's studying the way they move and then teaching them how to implement that style and be consistent with it, and that's how I kind of start every lesson is, just, getting players, I get right into their head. It's an interactive learning process. I learn as much from my hitter as they learn from me. It's, there's a difference between having a good swing and being a good hitter. The swing part's the mechanical part. That's easy to teach. Being a hitter, the competitive, the mental part of it, that's the tough one to teach because you have to instill confidence in a kid. And you got to get them to do that. And there are ways to do that, but it's not like a light switch. It's a process. And that's kind of where my teaching has evolved to. And I feel like I do a pretty good job of really getting inside players, bringing out what I call their hitter's soul. And then, they teach themselves how to become hitters. I'm not a teacher of the swing. I'm a teacher of learning to teach hitters how to teach themselves how to hit and compete in games.
I love that idea of being able to hand the keys over to a hitter and say, "Hey man, it's your car, you're driving now." And that's an awesome approach. It really makes sure these kids are going to be successful beyond their time with you. And kind of as you were talking, it reminded me of a video that you posted the other day. And the video was of the unorthodox swings lower half. And you posted something about, most coaches would say this is a bad swing and it's a professional major league swing. I love that individual style that you allow hitters to have.
I was one of those guys. I mean, it's like you teach heel up and, the foot doesn't roll over. Then you realize when you're generating 2.5 times your body mass into the ground and swinging, that foot's going to peel out and roll over. If you look at where a hitter is at contact, any major league hitter swinging on swings in their wheelhouse, you will see that heel firmly entrenched in the ground. That's where the resistance comes. It doesn't always even mean you have to firm up the front leg all the way. You can even have a little bent knee as long as you're inside that heel. George Springer, that was the hitter.
Yeah.
He always, if you look at his pelvis though, his pelvis looks like Mike Trout's, belly button on the pitcher, chest face in the pitcher at contact. Okay. And, but his back foot kind of held the ground. I truly believe if I could ask him what that does for him, he would say, that he was holding the ground as long as he could in his swing to create that transfer of power into that front side.
Yeah. And just right there, you used a couple of, cues, we could call it, a couple of keywords. How do you match your cueing to the different ages you work? I mean, you work with, let's say a 12-year-old kid at 4, and then at 5, you're going to have an elite high school baseball player. And how do you adjust your communication based on who you're working with?
Yeah, it really depends on, the age of the kid and what they can take. I got some really young kids that can take some more advanced cues where I talk about upper body, lower body working against each other and tension, very little bit of that. So with them, I just kind of go stride separation and I show them, how the shoulders and hips separate, or the hands and feet, real basic stuff. And just, once you get them doing it and hitting the ball hard, because that's always, the confidence builder is always when that ball comes off that bat, hitters are really in tune to learning, to whereas an older player like Ethan Sinclair or Brian Pincer or Spencer Crane, I can get really in depth with these guys and how to get into the ground, just really create that tension and barrel turn rearward and all the things that that professional hitters are doing, the best professional hitters, and they're able to take those in bulk versus the young kids. You got to give it to them in bits and pieces. It's a balance because you could be 5 o'clock you could have a lesson with a 6-year-old. And then at 5:30, I got a college kid, and you really got to just up and down the barometer in a real hurry, because it's real easy sometimes to take some of those high level concepts and try to give them to a young player, and they're just like,
I think that's one thing as a coach that helped me have confidence with, was seeing you be able to work with both ends of the spectrum and not think, like, I had a thought in my head is like, oh, if my older kids see me working with younger kids, they aren't going to think I'm a good coach. But then I saw you doing it all the time, and that was never it never came up. And I think I learned a little bit of confidence from you on that end, just like sticking to your guns and knowing that you're here to help kids And it's more so if a high schooler does have that problem, that's his problem. But I'm good, and I'm going to help you because you're here to get helped with your swing.
Yeah, well, with these young kids, like, the first time I'm in a hitting lesson with everyone, I don't even call them lessons anymore. I call them sessions, because I don't want kids to think it's like, me, the teacher, and there's the blackboard, I'm just pounding knowledge into you. Again, just cue thing for me. But, these young kids, I don't even do a lot of mechanics the first day, other than just, get them a little bit understanding plate coverage, balance, good grip, because grip has a lot to do with rollover and things like that. And then I just, I watch their swing. I tell them, I come in and I tell them after I kind of ask them to tell me a little bit about themselves, not just as a hitter. I'll get them thinking, like, ask them the question, is there a difference between having a good swing, being a good hitter? Ask them what type of hitter, they would perceive themselves if they were going to answer that question right there. Get them thinking and talking. Most of them are like, I don't know. I'll watch one swing and I'll be like, what'd you feel on that? I'm not sure. And then you start building, and I tell them, here's what I want you to think about. Your next swing, I want you to think, are you using more upper body or lower body? What's that sequence for you? And then they start buying in. And then what I try to do in that first lesson is get them in a position where they can really just barrel up and pound the ball to the back of the cage, so that they can just feel like, wow, I have more in the tank. I got more than I ever thought I had. And it keeps them wanting to come back and learn more. And then I watch the video at home, and that's when I kind of devise my plan. I'll kind of take a look at what they're doing, different points of the swing. And, I look at mindset when I look at video, especially when I get, clips of players in games. I can see mindset. I can see timidness. I can see aggressiveness. It's easy to anticipate when you've been doing it for this long and you've had so many good mentors. And then I teach these guys to connect the two so they can be a dangerous hitter. So,
and we've already covered a ton of technical things that come along with the swing. And I'm wondering over here, because I know I'll look at your schedule and I'll see you'll work with 8, 9, 10 athletes in a day, and it's all 30-minute session after 30-minute session after 30-minute session. How are you able to maximize that 30 minutes and get all this stuff done when you're rolling through them and you work with them and you have conversations and then it's on to the next one? How are you able to maximize that time?
It's a challenge. Sometimes I think it's more of a challenge in the beginning, because, you're trying to ingrain, just simple concepts. And some players, some of the young kids just have a real issue with balance and sequence, and just it's tough for them. So it's a little bit tougher, but after a while the wheels are in motion. And a lot of it is I give them things to do outside of the cage. My hitter, I tell them, if you want to really grow, you have to work outside the clock. When a coach calls a practice, when your hitting instructor works with you, you have to have a plan. So I'm big on, I try to get these guys, I'll give them 5 or 6 things that I do based on what I see in the cage, and just tell them, I want you to put that in a routine for yourself. Come to me next time and let's walk through that routine. And then I help them maximize that. That's where the Zoom lessons have come in really good for me with my players, because they know we're going to walk into that Zoom lesson and they're going to just work A to Z, their process. And then I start challenging with things like bad ball hitting and all that kind of stuff. So it's tough. It is tough, even for me as an instructor sometimes, doing 5, 6 straight hours of lessons every day, but you'll never get any less from me in my last 30 minutes, my first 30 minutes. But I got to up and down that volume right away. And I got to know my hitters. If they've been into me more than one time, it's my responsibility to know my hitters, what they need. And sometimes it just changes gears. I might have a prescribed, I'm going to work on this movement with them, but I see them just going in and just drilling that. And then I'm just going to say, hey, let's try something else. Let's break it up a little bit. Let's, I'll with Mallory, she gave me a Zoom video. She did kind of like a Happy Gilmore swing, or like a fun swing. And then I was like, you know what, that's an amazing sequence. I broke it down in slow motion. And I said, I think you should implement that as a drill for you, because it got her to lengthen herself, create that space, create that power. I actually did a breakdown of it and put it on my Instagram, and now she uses that every single day. So it's, good stuff.
Yeah, and she's one of the athletes we get to share, and she's very receptive to feedback, and she's so focused on self-improvement that with her, a lot of the mistakes she just like rolls off as a bad rep and is ready to work through it and figure out why that happened. She's got a really bright future ahead of her, and it's been fun seeing her on both sides in the cage with you and then in the gym with us. It's been a blast.
You're right, though. She turns the page. When something doesn't go right for her, process results. She moves on. If she has a crappy swing, she just give me the next one.
How is that something that you can communicate to younger hitters or maybe hitters who struggle with their failures as a way to help them through those processes?
I really focus on trying to get them to understand that, the results that you want are actually in the game, like, where the ball goes, that type of thing. The process of the cage is you just working on repeatable swing movements, your mentality, your process to keep you mentally, focused, because that's what routines do for baseball players. You know it. The hitters do the same thing. Pitchers don't walk on the line. Hitters will hang a pair of batting gloves 3 fingers out in their back pocket. Those are just mental things, because the game is so fast, and you can be up on a pedestal after hitting a grand slam. Go out in the field, run around second, third, and a ground ball rolls through your legs. And, it's like you don't even remember the ecstasy of that grand slam. It's so up and down, so fast. So I try to get these hitters just to realize that in the cage, you're focused on process. Don't worry about where the ball's going. You're going to have some great feel-good swings. You're going to have some ugly swings. Learn to let every swing have feedback to some things that may be breaking down. And sometimes it's just, you know what? You just don't take a good swing. It doesn't matter. It's like there's not always something to fix. In a game, you're going to take great swings. The pitcher's just going to beat you, because 7 times out of 10, if you're a great hitter, you're walking back to the dugout. You have to learn how to just turn the page quickly and realize that 70% failure rate. How do you handle that? How do you handle those 7 outs? Do you let them just break you, or do you let them drive you to keep up that 3 out of 4 out of 10 mentality? And one of the ways I tell all my hitters, you got to take an 0 for 0 mentality in every swing. There's no prior at bats, opening day mentality, no stats. Forget about your batting average. And I learned that from Steve Springer, from Quality at Bats. You got to learn to just put the pass behind you. Every swing is new life. Live in the moment, and just forget about the numbers. Just go out and battle and compete. Try to help your team win, and then slumps minimize that way, because usually slumps are not mechanical breakdowns; they're mental. And then coaches turn them into physical breakdowns.
Yeah.
Sorry, I rambled on that.
No, that was awesome.
That's awesome.
And being a former baseball player myself, if you play for long enough, you're gonna be in a slump. That's a fact. And I think working through that slump is what separates, equal skills from a standpoint of an equal skill player that's able to get through their slumps is going to play longer.
Look at Chris Davis when he had that 56 game hitless streak or whatever it was. He talked about every day. He just came to the park and he didn't stress about the pass. He just stuck with his routine, stayed with it. Endured. The most of the pressure came from the media. The coach stuck with him, and and he swung his way out of it. I mean, I give that guy a lot of credit, while everybody was bashing him, saying, you get paid $20 million a year, whatever it was. I felt for that guy, but I admired him, and I talk to my players about that all the time. What that guy had to be going through mentally with the media and the pressure, and he just went about his business, and then he broke out of it.
I have a question for both of you guys, really, being somebody who hasn't spent much time swinging a baseball bat in my life. And Bob, I want to touch on this towards the end of the conversation, so I'll come back to it. But when I look at baseball players and I look at hitting, I feel like one of the only aspects of sports where every swing is completely independent of the other, right? So just because you hit the pitch before does not mean you have any higher percentage of hitting the next pitch. Doesn't mean you have any lower percentage of hitting. Every single pitch is independent of the other. So we see that these players get in these slumps, and it's not something that I'm familiar with, because in my past, if I drop a pass, I know the quarterback is trying to throw me a football and it's directed towards me, and I know where he's trying to throw it and where I need to be there, and I just need to focus more, right? I would just say, okay, well, just watch the ball in. I could have these little mental cues. But baseball is completely different. The pitcher's trying to throw a baseball to where you can't hit it, and every swing is independent of the other because the ball's got movement. How do you guys help athletes get through? And again, it goes back to that conversation you guys just had. How do you help athletes get through kind of those times where it seems like cut after cut, it's adding up negatively as opposed to adding up, positively. And as the batting average drops, as the home runs, don't start going over the fence. How does that all work as far as, the 6 inches between the ears?
How did you handle that, James? I mean, you actually probably witnessed that.
Yeah. So I think one thing that I did a good job at was I controlled my practices better than some of my at-bats during those bad times. So I understood that, like, if I got in the cage and my swing felt great, I would get out early. If I got in the cage and it felt okay, I would stay in until it felt great. But I also knew there were times where my swing felt trash and I'd get out. And I think that helped me not dwell on a bad swing or a bad session, and it helped me move on to the next day, or maybe I focused on something that I could have some success and maybe worked some backhand picks. In the games, though, I felt that I struggled a little bit more when I was in a slump and then there were higher pressure situations. And I think narrowing my focus to a simple thing that one of the coaches you mentioned was my hitting coach when I was in middle school, Chris Check. And it was just to narrow the focus, saying, hey, man, it's simple. Put the barrel on the ball and good things will happen. And that really just helped me saying, like, hey, I've done this a million times. All I need to do in this situation is put the barrel on the ball and everything else will take care of itself.
Yep, and that's living in the moment. Just not every swing's a bad swing. The pitcher just beats you. I tell hitters to put some of their best swings in a cage and in games in their phone as reminders when they're feeling down, because they'll remember what that felt like. It just that could just give them a little bit of hope, just to kind of get in there and just, no matter how many times you fall, get up and keep battling. I always tell hitters, you're one swing away from a hitting streak. You could be 0 for 20, just feeling like baseball's over for you, and then you just smash one into the gap for a game winner, and you're not even remember those 20 prior at bats. So that's the mental challenge for hitters, because the success rate is so much smaller from a hitting perspective than the failures. I don't even call them failures, because failing to me is not trying, it's not having tried. So just handling those outs, handling those tough times, sticking to your routines, and swinging through it. Just keep swinging.
I like how you mentioned that, like, highlight on your phone. That was something that I did too. Is like, I distinctly remember one specific highlight early on in my college career that I would replay. And video breakdown and videos weren't that popular back then. Like now, everybody's videoing their swings. But I think that's one thing that you've really taken to. In being consistent with sending your athletes videos of their swings. When you send that video out to a kid, what's that communication like between the good and the bad? How do you add value to that video that you send with your communication through it?
Well, what I will do is, you only see the good swings on Instagram because they're the feel good swings that you want everybody to see. But there are some that are ugly, and those ones get sent separately right after with a little bit of, hey, I saw here that you're dropping your hands, as your strike foot's coming down, you're underneath, ball's top of the zone. Kind of just break that down, and then I'll actually match up a good swing. I don't want to say good versus bad, but it is. It's good versus bad, and same pitch height and how they were able to turn that barrel, stay on plane versus how they stepped and dropped the hands and got underneath it, so they can see it. You know what I mean? And then kind of work through it. Video is great, but it can also be a trap if a player just looks at becoming robotic. You try to get hitters all the time to realize that video is just a tool that you use to see sequence. But you have to understand that you're not looking for a Burger King Whopper type swing. You're looking to try to just see what your sequence is and how consistent you can be with balls in different locations, and then use that. And the feel-good swings, they see, wow, I remember how I felt on that. I felt like Ken Griffey Jr.'s effortless swing. And then the ones that aren't so good, I'll give them certain things to do. Sometimes it's just, hey, you just had a bad swing. Move on. It doesn't matter.
I like that. Hitting the flush. Just flush it. I like it.
Flush it. There you go.
Flush it. Mark, when I was coaching with Mark Shapiro back with the Spiders, that was his big thing, is he would make these 12-year-old kids flush their ear to get that bad swing or that bad at bat. Just flush it.
Kids will remember that forever. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bob, who's got your favorite swing? Because I remember growing up watching KGJ do his thing, and I mean, it was just So beautiful to watch, and I imagine everybody else has the same thought. Who's got your favorite swing right now?
My favorite swing right now is definitely Christian Yelich. You just watch how his whole process, and past is going to be, Ken Griffey Jr. I also, I look at the old school swingers where these guys had that, just starting low and bringing up and creating momentum. 80% of Hall of Famers have that movement. It's very difficult for young hitters to buy into that. That's why I do some drills to see if that works for them. But, you look at the, the Babe Ruth, guys like that. I love Mike Trout's swing. Albert Pujols, when he was with St. Louis, and he was amazing. But if I'm going to pick one guy right now that I would tell every player to aspire to try to have that kind of success from A to Z, it's going to be Yelich.
And also on a selfish question, I think you did an awesome job of basically explaining how every swing is going to look different. It's all to the specific athlete. You look at a guy like Gary Sheffield, right? Is that just the craziest swing of all time? And he was so elite that he was really able to kind of cock his bat before those swings and time up his front leg. Would you see that and try to coach him out of that? Do you think that's something that he dealt with
anymore,
going up the whole way? Or, what do you do when you approach a swing like that?
The ball off the bat is the number one factor, is whether or not you're going to make adjustments. Can you get to good hitting positions consistently on time? And it's funny that you said that about Gary Sheffield, because I just got some video on him, and I don't know, James, if you saw my Derek Jeter where his hands were, and I drew the circle around. If you look at Gary Sheffield, I'll send you this video, CT, if I can get your cell phone number. Yeah. If you watch Gary Sheffield doing that, you're going to see, you can draw a circle around his hands. You think that guy's out of control? Well, he just did like a video. He said he did that to keep the bat in his fingers, as opposed to the base of his kind of in his palms. And he did that to feel, the bat is in my fingers. And then he went around his back shoulder, and he talked about that as his rhythm and timing mechanism. So it was to keep loose, to create timing and rhythm for him. And, when you see him doing that, you draw that circle, he's in that circle. We think he's like doing all that. He's in total control of his swing and timing, just like Derek Jeter was. Seeing that today, absolutely not. I would say roll with it. It's a momentum creator to be able to create the upper body momentum that goes back and around versus just the steady pitch the 10th and just go, A to Z, which, most hitters in baseball don't do that.
Yeah. I think that we've covered a ton, and I hope people are listening get the idea of this individualized process that all hitters need to find their own swing. And that is so important. How are you able to take that, individualized process and concept, and then, bring that to an entire organization like the T3 Elite? What are some of the challenges that you've had along the way from, the early days where, when I joined T3 6-7 years ago, to the T3 Rays, to now the T3 Elite? What are some of those things that you've done to improve our program to take it where it is today from a coaches coaching each other standpoint?
Yeah, we brought in a couple former major leaguers, Brad Stillings and Ryan Rua. That's two of the keys of it. You want to have like a set organizational philosophy, no doubt about it, but that doesn't mean that strips away their individualism. So, I'm never going to tell a hitter we're all going to hit the same way. We're all going to look like, the same hitter, but there are fundamental concepts, how you approach your hitting, how you create your routines to maximize, what you do individually and how that implements your style to be consistent. It doesn't matter where the hands are held or if you're a wide base stance guy or a narrow base stance guy, that doesn't matter. To me, those can be totally different because, like you said, every swing is unique and different. So, it's the same, but it's also different, so, that's our goal. And I did this, the Instagram Live with Brad Stillings yesterday. We talked about just, making sure that our pitchers going forward from, 9 years old up to 18 years old, that they're all on the same throwing program, that they all understand the same philosophy, and they just use that philosophy to create their individual style and rake. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and for our top level coaches, that's definitely something that we preach and teach. How does that translate when we start adding some of our younger teams? And, some of our teams still have parent coaches that are very passionate about baseball. Is that a concept that is a little harder for someone with less experience to grasp?
Yeah, it's ultimately you'd love to be able to have. There's a big difference between dad ball coaches and daddy ball coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Some organizations get a bad rep for having some dad coaches, but if we didn't have them, there wouldn't be 10 teams in the organization, maybe even less. You gotta, your dad's coach the game. We just try to weed out the daddy ball guys. I don't think we have any of those. Just like it's like a player. Some coaches are better than others. We try to implement our philosophy in those academies. And we encourage the coaches to go there. We're probably going to start doing maybe more coaches clinics. If these coaches are teaching some good things within our organizational philosophy, we're not going to try to strip them of their individuality. But we would like to be more cohesive. And it's tough when you have 18 teams to get everybody 100% on the same page. It's enough to try to get them in the same book, in the same chapter. And that's kind of what we need to get better at that. There's no doubt we need to get better at that. And I feel that now with the coaches we have, we're going to be able to do that. Training too, like for how many years, players balk at the training, I was, first we started with everybody doing it as a team, and that just didn't do well over at the old place. And then we let them go individually, and some people did it. The diehards didn't. And then you came back in, James, and you did a great job of, we created that structure, and more kids are still trickling in. Still not nearly as many, but that team setting, and I stood corrected on it, has definitely been more of an advantage to the core guys that goes to those. Now we just try to continue to pull guys in one by one to create that domino effect because they see the results.
And I think now more than ever, our coaching staffs are more in sync with what we're doing with our kids from a training side to a baseball side. And we've seen that growth this winter. And it's super exciting because it's a group of young and hungry kids that are 12 to 14 that are buying in on both ends. And I'm really excited, as we continue to grow and develop that relationship, to see these kids get impacted and to see what appropriate coaching from a baseball side looks like, and then appropriate baseball training looks like. It's a really exciting time for the T3 elite baseball players to be a part of this program.
Yeah, your guys, that first one I did, that shout out I gave you guys was so heartfelt, because I was like, you guys doing this stuff in the morning, we're not an organization that's saying, hey, if you want to buy this session, and you guys are religious, a group of you guys every day doing these things at night now. And it's unfortunate that more people aren't taking advantage of it, but the ones that do, and they see it and they make comments to me about, you guys are absolutely amazing with what you're doing with that. My hat is tipped to you guys for that.
Thank you. And, you are one of the first guys to reach out through the virtual lessons. What's the farthest way somebody's reached out to you to do one of those virtual lessons?
I've had a guy from Venezuela actually reach out and ask me to break down the swing, which
awesome.
I did that. The virtual lessons, and it's an 8-year-old kid, by the way. The video I sent back was just, don't fix anything right now, dude. The swing is amazing. I'll send you a picture of the little kid. It's hilarious.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I got somebody from Israel asking me if he could use my stuff and just give me the credits. I said, I don't care, just use them. But the virtual lessons has been local. The virtual lessons have been more just my people.
Yeah.
Now that the email's out, I told Mike, we don't want to replace, in facility training with that. That's just more things like in a pandemic or somebody reaching far away, because you can't really see a ball out of a hand. You can do tee work if you're good at it to create a good structure. It's a great way to be able to do a lesson when you can't get in. But for the most part, we want everyone in our facility, to get trained.
Yeah, and nothing, I don't think anything will ever replace that, personal connection. But the cool thing about it is that it's still people connecting with people. Yes. And coaches connecting with athletes. And that's so cool to see continuing, given everybody's circumstances.
Yep, it's been great. So,
Bob, in a perfect world, so we're saying facilities are back open, teams are back together, tournaments are on the weekends. What would you like? And we talked about, the T3 Elite 12 to 14 group. What would a week look like as far as one-on-one coaching, team practices, games, doing stuff solo, what would maybe a workout week prescription look like for a 12 to 14-year-old baseball player?
Yeah, I mean, the number one is getting it back to the date that we can start playing, and when we can practice. And I guess in a perfect world, it would be the whole team could come in like they were, and we can get them ready to play in a 2-week period. But unfortunately, if we do the social distancing thing, we're going to have to break up into groups and be really creative if it's having 5 kids on the field. And I've already talked to my parents about how we just have an infield in for an hour. A few guys are over the cage doing their BP, or if we're outside, 2 fields, but they're hard to get because all the high school and college facilities are closed right now. And then just, kind of do the best we can with getting as much work as we can, before we play. But, if it's going to be limited, we got to be really creative in, how we do the breaking up the infield, the outfield, pitchers and catchers. It'll be in small groups, and then we'll just, do the best we can until we all get together and go out in the field and just try to mesh.
So if I'm like a 14-year-old kid and I say, hey, Bob, what do I need to do this week at the end of the week, I need to be better at baseball? What kind of week what should I plan for if I'm that 14-year-old athlete? Like, how many times am I in the cage? What am I doing with my arm? Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that we could tell these kids that they could start doing to schedule out their week?
Yeah, you're doing pretty much hitting every day. You should definitely be hitting every day something, whether be your tee work or someone throwing to you on a field. That you can always do on your own. There's no excuses. You buy a rubber tee, and you can buy a cheap net. You can go up to pitchers. They should be following their prescribed throwing program that Brad Stillings puts out on T3_pitching every day. And their band work, and Kenny Pearson does a great job of demoing the things that they could be doing. There's not a shortage of resources for these players. The hard part is getting them to do it. I put things out for my team early, and it always gravitated towards, a select few that were diehards with it. And I was telling them, you're going to see, it's going to be easy to see who's ready and who's not, when we're actually given the green light to go ahead and play. So it would be work your craft every day, something every day.
And as you're talking through, like, buy a tee and start hitting, like, I'm thinking back to that story you told us about. You were watching kids hit off of a table. Those kids didn't make any excuses why they couldn't buy a tee. They figured out a way.
They're hitting in bare feet. It just, there's no, they're having people pitch to them bottle caps with broomsticks that they just break off the end of the broom. It's, to me, when I saw that kind of stuff, number one, made me want to cry. Number two, it just made me realize these guys are hungry. And that's why those guys get drafted.
Yeah.
What was the biggest takeaway? Yeah. What was the biggest takeaway from your trip? Just that it doesn't matter. Like, these athletes who want it are going to do everything that they can do to get there.
That the true diehards are not going to be told they have to practice. They have to get in their work. That was the most thing that stuck out to me is, if you have to have someone to motivate you, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds like some conversations James and I have often about that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We feel the same way. We shouldn't have to tell you. We shouldn't have to beg you. We shouldn't have to ask you. You should want it enough to be able to move forward. James, now I do have a couple selfish questions, so I'll let you get the important stuff out first. So, Bob, I did want to ask you this. First of all, I have so much respect for baseball players, and I say often when it comes up in conversation, I think the hardest thing to do in sports is to hit a baseball with a wooden bat in front of thousands of people with a pitcher who's trying to throw a pitch that you can't hit. I mean, I think it's impossible to wrap my mind around the idea. And so the conversation comes up often, when you're with your buddies, out doing whatever that says, all right, if I shot 10 free throws in an NBA game, how many would I hit? Right. Or if I played an NFL game, would I be able to rush for or catch a touchdown pass? Right. These kind of theoretical situations. So with me being somebody who has not picked up a baseball bat since 9th grade, right, I always say that if I was the lead batter for an MLB team and I played every single game and I got 3 or 4 at bats, I am confident that I would not be able to get on base once in an entire season, right? Because I think it's the hardest thing to do. How many sessions with me would you have to feel comfortable and confident with me going out there, playing an entire season and being able to get on base one time?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't even approach that from a mechanic standpoint. That would go right to your mentality. That if your mentality is I'm going to fail every single time I'm up there, then if you're not willing to change that, then guess what? You're not going to be. You might as well just go play soccer or lacrosse right
Sure.
So I would work on that. I would just work on, and I would hone in on baseball is the only sport. Hitting is the only thing you can do in sports to where you could be 30% successful, okay, and still become rich doing it, and be considered, you could become a Hall of Famer 3 for 10 on average. You're
right.
You're a multi-year all-star, you're a millionaire, and if you do it for long enough, you're going to have a chance to be in the Hall of Fame. So just there, I work on that failure rate we talked about a little bit earlier, just understanding you're going to make outs, how to turn the page. Confidence is going to be bred by you just, sticking with it and trying to me, it's like, hit the ball hard, try to help your team win. If you can go in there with an unselfish, me stats attitude that every time you go up, unless you're told to bunt or move a runner by hitting the ball the opposite side of the field, which most hitters can't do when they're told to do that, you hit the ball hard as a goal every single time, knowing that you're not going to, but that's your goal, and do everything you can to help your team win. And those are the players that I work with that end up having the most success consistently.
Man,
I may have been all right early on because I couldn't hit the ball, but if I got on base, I was stealing second, stealing third, and so maybe I would have been one of those guys. If I could lean into a pitch and get hit by it, or if I knew the pitch wasn't great, I would just.
Yeah.
Right. My on base percentage was great. I just, as soon as I would try to swing the bat, I wasn't too exceptional. But I imagine a couple lessons with you, I could have a little more confidence.
How many lessons? I don't know, but I would tell you this: you'd walk out of my cage after a half hour after just a mental adjustment, and then I would just find ways to put pitches in your wheelhouse and just have you hammer the ball so hard. I don't care what you look like when you started to see how much power you have with guns like you have. I think you'd be like, well, wait a minute, maybe with a little bit of help,
yeah,
I could do this. And then I tell you to come back until you get it down.
I would definitely have the swagger.
You would be intimidating in a batter's box, that's for sure. With the tattoos and the you tall for a baseball player,
Yeah.
One session, CT, you'd be banging.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm gonna make a note. Send that to all my friends. Yeah. Another thing I do so much appreciate about baseball players, like you said, the individual aspect is guys have so much swagger. You're able to turn it into a lot of individual things. We talk about different, crazy rituals that people have before games, and how they like to wear their socks and how they like to wear their hats. And so it is cool to see players get out there and bring some swagger, because we know that is really what sells tickets. When you have favorite players who look a certain way and play a certain way, we tend to flock towards those players. What's one of the more wild kind of pre batter's box things that you've had players do that they've had success from?
You mean like just kind of like unorthodox stuff?
Yeah. Whether, no matter what it is, what is something that would be a little different that guys would go up there and have success, and you found either funny or different or something you would go home and tell your wife about?
Well, I guess, I don't know if you saw that Japanese guy who walked up to the plate and he was in the box and he was doing his twirling or whatever with the bat. I mean, something like that. I mean, I don't have anybody that does anything crazy. I do have guys and girls that do different things, different field things, walking up to the plate, and but probably nothing that stands out like from a radical thing where I would laugh. Maybe now that I'm doing these challenges, maybe I could find someone who's really tight, or maybe when they're going through a slump. I think you're onto something, CT.
Yeah.
Something unorthodox to do before they go up, just to break that, like make them laugh or somebody in their dugout laugh. So actually that's a learning tool for me.
Maybe. I remember always watching, was it Nomar Garciaparra, who would do all this stuff with his wrists and with his feet?
Like Hargrove,
the human rain delay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. We had talked about that a couple weeks ago, James. Yeah, I mean, I just think that stuff is so interesting, but it's whatever helps.
Morgan,
whatever helps the athlete.
Yeah. There's a lot of funky things that guys do that a lot of coaches would tell them stop doing that. And again, in my younger days, I probably would have been one of those coaches, but now you see the individuality and you get into the mindset. I've talked to enough former major league players, like, Jim told me, I don't know if you know this, but, he can go up there and he'd hold the bat out, and he said that his mindset on that was he'd get out there, he'd be in his soft focus where he wasn't, just kind of just loose and relaxed. He's being able to see his elements around him, and he kind of get up there and he'd sight the release point, of where he's, going to see the pitcher release the ball, and then he'd come down, and that's where his hard focus started, and it's like, I never knew that, it's, so, these guys, when they do these things, most of them won't tell you, I just do that. They have a reason why they do it. So it's pretty cool stuff.
I think that soft focus to narrow focus is something that we could spend a ton of time talking about that relates to a bunch of different sports, but specifically, what you're talking about with Jim Tomei and his swing is something that is a concept that can really help young hitters deal with like the stress of an at bat, is to understand that like you really only have to be zoned in for that amount of time. And if you try and be zoned in for too long, you kind of dome yourself out and you aren't able to actually have that hard focus that you need at that time. I love that coaching point. It's similar to weightlifters competing, that one moment when they lift the bar, what's going through their mind. Hopefully it's the right thing. But we can do more as coaches than we know to kind of help influence that.
Yeah, I talk about hard focus, soft focus all the time. And the way I'll teach it is to teach soft focus versus hard focus. It'll be like, let's go eye to eye and let's stare at each other for more than 5 seconds, and you start
terrifying.
You get blurry. You know what I mean? But if you just kind of will stand each other eye to eye, but don't look me right in the eye, and you'll be able to see the kid in the cage over there, or the kid in the bullpen over there. I'll be able to see the color of your shirt, maybe your cap, and then you can lock in, and you're only locking in for that split second. You see a baseball come out of the hand less than a half a second. You actually, in the MLB, 92-mile-an-hour fastball, they talk about, you actually don't see the ball anymore after 21 feet to the balls to the plate. You lose your vision. More than four inches of moving up and down. I think it's the occipital plane. You're legally blind. I mean, there's so much with vision, and I learned that from the pure swing guys, that is not taught. And I bought the strobe glasses that the Indians use from Lonnie Soloff, and I started implementing that a little bit. I don't know if you see no strobe lights.
Yeah, they're tough, man. It really makes your brain fill in the gaps with what you're missing with your eyes. Yeah, that's awesome. I love those things.
Vision training will be something we try to get into too as an organization. It's tough because it's one person at a time using it, but I've used it in the cage with hitters. And they can't hit it when the glasses are on, but when they take it off, they said the ball looks like a beach ball. It's crazy. Yeah.
I've seen similar success with receivers and defensive backs as well. We use that in football. We had those glasses that would turn on and turn off. And,
I have them. You want to use them?
Yeah. May have to mess with them. Yeah, that would be awesome. I remember messing with those, and I had the same result. I remember it would 10 yards away, and then it turns off and turns back on. And it's right here and about to hit you in the face. But as soon as you take those off, you're sharpened, and everything becomes seemingly easier.
If you're interested, when we open back up, I'll bring them in.
Yeah, that would be.
Let's get CT in the cage.
Let's get me up. James had me taking some cuts last year, and I love that. You guys are firing me up. I might have to jump back in. And
good deal.
Yeah, video evidence. Bob, what do you think? What are we missing? What are we missing out in the industry? Whether it be specific skills, coaching, or just coaches in general. What's something that kind of passes us up that you think we might be missing
from
in
a
the industry
standpoint?
From a coach's standpoint, yes, sir.
The glaring thing that's missing from a coach's standpoint is their ability to be willing to grow, learn, and adjust with the evolution of athlete training and baseball coaching, because you got so many people that are so locked into old school concepts and cues, and it becomes easy to be comfortable. And I think that you're not always teaching and reinventing the wheel on training, but you're learning to articulate, age-old concepts, laws of physics, just articulated and taught in different ways based on your audience, from ability levels and age levels. So I think that the coaches that are willing to grow and adjust and adapt are the coaches that not only, last the longest, but, learn the most, teach the best, have the best clients, and they're able to take their clients to the next level. And it's not always just the pro level. I mean, it's you might be the best rec player you could be, or take your transition to the high school level or the college level. Just as long as we can teach athletes to get better with their ability, be based on those concepts of learning to grow as coaches, we have done our jobs as coaches and as life coaches too, not just skill coaches.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we figure out where we can find you and all the cool stuff you're doing on social media, is there anything we missed, Bob? Is there anything that you wanted to hit on that we missed this afternoon?
No, I mean, the only thing I'd go back to a little bit is, just the philosophy. It's, I learned from Joe Charbonneau, who Charlie Manning was his hitting coach, the 3 phases, of learning. And it's for coaches too. It's you hear it, you see it, and you do it. And doing it is always last. So you hear it, that's the conversation piece. The coaches and players or athletes learning from each other. You see it, that's the visual part, the video part of it. The pro guys, how they do it, and girls, and then your athlete putting them, and then the doing it is the feel of it. And the doing it is 100% on the athlete, baseball player, the golfer, the football player. It's they are learning to teach themselves how to compete in battle on game day. From a hitter standpoint, they're in the box, and there's no matter what they're taught, it's all on them. They have to learn to compete, number one, against themselves, and number two, I've learned you're not competing against a person or a player, you're competing against the ball. And when you can just learn to compete against the spin, the velocity, the location of the ball, rather than think of Greg Maddux is throwing it, you just realize that, hey, baseball players all put their baseball pants on one leg at a time, and you're just competing against yourself and the ball, and then you have success because you're not scared. You're not afraid to face, the competitiveness of other high level players.
And I think that's one thing that I just wanted to mention is, like, whether it's helping a 12-year-old get his first hit ever, or whether it's a elite college baseball player hone and refine the skills, you're able to communicate your passion to help that individual. And some of my favorite memories as a coach and as a hitting coach have not been with the best athletes I've worked with, but have been with the worst athletes I've worked with that have found a little bit of success. And I think that's so cool. And you've had so many of those moments with athletes, finding that little bit of success, kids that come to you and maybe haven't gotten a hit yet, and then they work with you, and their next season is totally different than their last season. And they're able to understand that concept of, I work hard, I have someone who's helping me, and now that success is shown with my first hit or my first extra base hit. And all those little moments and all those thousands of hitters that you've worked with, that is something that is so cool to be able to share. And seeing you do it for such a long time and at elite level, I don't know how many of those stories you have, but are there any that stand out, that you can kind of share with us here as we kind of close?
Yeah, I mean, I have pretty much every card and every little thing that a player has sent me over the years. Just thank you. You're a great coach. I'm not trying to toot my horn or anything, but just those little things of, you impact lives when somebody comes back with a story of, hey, I wasn't always the greatest baseball player, but you really taught me how to deal with adversity in life. Last year I was watching a baseball game, and I don't know, somebody in the outfield came up and just did a crow hop and gunned somebody out at home plate. And I got a text from one of my kids. I coach at 12 years old. He said, "Hey, Coach Beck, I don't know if you're watching the Indians game, but I can't remember who was. I think it was, I don't even remember. But anyway, he said, hey, that you threw that runner out at home, and he's like, that's exactly what you taught us how to do when we were 12 years old. Just little things like that. Just makes that you do things the right way for the right reasons. Because as a young coach, I had one situation where I didn't handle tryouts and cutting in a way, that you should, because I got a little bit caught up in the, wanting to win thing. And I learned so much from, a couple of players. I lost a friend over it. And, that really made me learn that, there's so much more to this game than just, teaching players how to win games. It's how to win life and win in life. And, so lots of good little moments like that. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's stuff we live for as coaches. So if athletes can't get to T3 and get to the back and see you do your thing, where can people find you on social media?
My number one place is my Instagram account at Coach Beck 00. That's the main one. I also have a Bob Beck Baseball LLC on Facebook, but nobody's on Facebook now except for the parents. Twitter is at Bob Beck Baseball, and I kind of tie in my Instagram to both of those accounts. So everything that you see, I have a website that I use, bobbeckbaseball.com. It's more or less just to kind of put information out there as me as like an independent contractor, not trying to solicit business outside of T3. I do 100% of my business there, but I like to have that. It's actually under construction where I just coaching up our kids and showing what they do. So that's available. And then obviously, anybody who contacts me through a DM or, through my phone number or an email, has questions or wants me to break down a swing or whatever, I'll always find ways to do it. You're at the bottom now, man.
Yeah. How did that happen?
Yeah. I just had a battery notification and must have got flipped. I apologize for that. Bob, thank you so much. We can't thank you enough for having you on. Really, really awesome stuff. I think this is something that, baseball coaches and athletes alike can rewind, can skip back 15, 30 seconds at a time and listen to some of the awesome stuff. Come see us at T3 Performance. By now, hopefully everything's, up and going by the time people hear this. Again, we've had the hit Dr. Bob Beck on with us. It's been CT and Coach James again with episode 7 of Cutoffs and Coffee. More awesome conversations to come. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you all soon. Thank you.